Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of Beyond Ideas podcast. My name is Jorge Surya, and today we are gonna talk about the future and especially about the suffering that you can find in the future. So, welcome, and I hope that you enjoy this episode. Yeah, I don't know why. Today I feel a bit shy, a bit nervous. It is what it is, I guess. Part of the journey, part of the mind. As you know, just starting this new journey, talking about different topics about life. And yeah, today's topic, let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. But I recognize that my inner critic, it's active, telling me it's like, what am I doing? Kind of like that. But let's see. Let's see. Let's have fun. And yeah, and I have a new microphone. The other one, I think it was losing its life. So yeah, this is gonna be the new thing for now, and let's see what happens. I wrote the future as a form of suffering, which is a very big form of suffering. I know it has been in my life, and I'm pretty sure it is in everyone's life. So first, let's start talking about what is the future. And I am so witty, so smart, and so everything that I'm gonna enlighten you on what is the future. Of course not. I'm sure that you have a definition of future, and just stick with me because I believe that we all suffer from the future. And I realized some years ago, and I'm sure maybe you are enlightened and you don't need to learn anything new. I'm sure that we all deal with the future in some form of another in every day, and we all have an immense amount of suffering from the future. So so I just want to state the basis, which is that the future, it's just a mind story. It is nothing else. The future is like a fantasy. Like, if I ask you the question, can you say yes to, is the future real? Can the future be real? I believe that the future hasn't happened yet. We don't know. Of course, you can predict that, maybe you hold this Palo Santo and you drop it, and you can predict that the Palo Santo is gonna drop. It's gonna hit the table, and it's probably correct, right? But there are many things that we think of in the future that they may never happen at all. And here's the situation, and we've been talking about the mind and the ego a lot in this podcast, and I hope that that's going to be the common topic forever, because it's super cool to study like how the mind thinks. And like if we go to the placebo effect, or the studies of the mind and the placebo. Yeah, I'm not going to go so much into the placebo, but the placebo was a way of showing us that the mind sometimes can create like very strong sensations and very strong realities from things that are not real. And like I say, and maybe you can argue back with me, but I believe that the future is not real. The future is just something in the mind. It is just an idea. It is just something. And how much do you suffer? How much do we suffer from something that is not real? Is it worth suffering from something that hasn't even happened yet? So yeah, we're gonna explore these things today, I would say. And I'm also gonna share some of my stories and some of my experiences, because for some topics that we talk about here are things that I've lived before, and I've dealt with them, and I found a way of finding relaxation and finding openness when dealing with the future. So let's see. Yeah, and another thing about the future is that, of course, thinking about the future can be good. And maybe at the end of the episode, I'll explain more about it, because, yeah, I will tell you some of the ways that I deal with this suffering of the future. And one way is, of course, thinking about the positive part of the future, which is, the good things that can happen to you in your life. But sometimes you may fantasize, or we all fantasize with our lives, with the really beautiful things that we want to happen in our lives. Like, maybe, I don't know, your life situation. But maybe I can speak about my life situation. Maybe I wish that I'm 34 now. Maybe I wish that by the time I'm 37, that yeah, I can make a living doing something that I really like, and that I can be independent, and maybe this podcast and offering coaching sessions. Who knows if that's going to be my future? But sometimes I fantasize about that, and I'm like, yeah, that would be really cool. However, when a fantasy about the future becomes so big, then sometimes it can cause a lot of paralysis. And that's what happens to me often. And I think it happens to everyone. Because if you're fantasizing about something that you haven't done yet, let's say working out. Let's say you work out here and there, but like not so often, or you don't work out at all, or you're not consistent in doing exercise in your life, whichever form of exercise. And sometimes, or you feel that you are overweight a little bit, or like you're not healthy enough, and working out or doing yoga would help you a lot. And then maybe on a Sunday night, you are sitting watching TV, watching a show, a movie, whatever, and you fantasize of like how much better your life would be if you did exercise. And we probably all have different cases of fantasizing about things that we want in our life that hasn't even happened yet, and especially that we are very far from there. Because in reality, if you were already working out, probably, and you had a goal, maybe, of like, just getting in shape or whatever it is, I don't know if you would give so much thought to this because you're already doing it. Do you give more thought to the things that you don't do than the things that you actually do? At least that's what I see in my life when I think about workout. Before I started like doing it consistently, yeah, maybe I thought about it some here and there, that it would be better if I was in better shape here and there, whatever. But it has been almost 4 years, and ever since I started, like I don't think about it, and I just do it every week. But I never thought about like what it could bring into my life. So maybe this is already one of the things that I want to share with you, and it just came up of like, yeah, maybe thinking about the future are thinking about things that hasn't happened yet, because the things that you have in your life and the things that you do already, maybe they don't give so much thought because they're present, they're not from the future. But yeah, this is just one of these crazy thoughts and reflections. And I would say that one of the cool things about the future and the suffering is this concept and this idea. Are you suffering right now for something that hasn't happened yet? And just keep this question in you throughout this episode and for your life. It's like questioning your life. Sometimes there are situations where you are thinking about the future and you are suffering for something that hasn't happened yet. And one of the beautiful parts is that the future, it's not good or bad or anything. I just believe that the future is not real. But yeah, let's go back to this question of like suffering from something that hasn't happened. Maybe I give you a very silly example that maybe we all resonate with. Imagine that you are again in school or in university and you have to do a presentation in front of your whole class, and you're feeling shy or you're feeling whatever. Maybe some people are really good at public speaking. I never felt super, super bad about it, but there's always some nervousness, when you have to do something in front of other people. And imagine that you actually suffer a lot from it. But imagine that you are the day before in your house and thinking about it. Thinking about, oh, tomorrow I have to present. I have to present this thing at school, at work, or whatever. Just imagine that. And you are already in that moment, you are already feeling anxious. You're already feeling bad. Thinking about all the different possibilities, thinking about all the things you gotta say, thinking about the people in class, how they're gonna react, and thinking a lot about the future and things and endless loop, and also even feeling a real thing, which doesn't really, maybe the mind, we can agree that, or maybe not, but I would say that the mind thing may not be real, but the physical sensations are real. if you were in that situation thinking that you got to do that presentation tomorrow and you start feeling nervous already, that is a very real thing, I believe. So this is just one silly example of how one can suffer from something that hasn't happened. Yeah, maybe in your life you're having this, right? Maybe there's a situation at work that you don't want to deal with, and it happens in 3 days, and you're already thinking about it, and you may be suffering for 3 days before that situation happens. And you know what's beautiful? That many times when we leave that situation, we actually don't suffer at all afterwards. So yeah, this may be something for you to think about. And I will give some examples of my life because I think that this can help you to understand. Or I tell you how I got to understand this thing about, like, why do I suffer so much in the present moment for something that has not happened yet, and many times something that will never happen at all. So I remember when I was 30, when I turned 30, it was like a very pivotal moment in my life. And maybe another time I can tell you the whole story about it. But essentially, I started to change some of my habits. And I found I was not working at that time, and then I found a couple of different jobs, and then I stick to one job that it was just an interesting job. It was like renting cars and driving around, and yeah, it was quite a fun job. But especially I got some important things there, not from the job, but from the life decisions that I made. One of the decisions that I made, I was like hitting rock bottom at some point when I was 30, and one of the decisions that I made was like, okay, I need to change something in my life. I gotta get a job, and this job was fantastic because I had to wake up very early, so it kept me like on a very good routine, and it was a really tough job. And then the other thing was like, I wanna journal and meditate that as often as possible. So what I would do is that I would write one page of the journal in every day. So I would sit down and meditate for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes or something like that before going to work. Wake up, sound the alarm, go straight to the couch and put the timer to meditate. And so I would do the meditation, just focus on my breathing, whatever, nothing crazy. And then I would just open the journal and write one page. And I always start. I still kind of do this. And I always start, today I feel. And that's all I did. And this practice took me like 15 minutes tops before going to work. But the cool thing about the practice was that I would write that page, like, today I feel sad, today I feel happy, or I'm looking forward for this, or I don't really want to go to work, or I'm pissed off, I'm angry, triggered, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But the cool part is that I would read the previous page. So if I wrote the day before or whenever the last time I wrote, I would read that page. And that's a practice that I kept for some time. And then after some months, I started to realize something, which was that many times I was predicting things or situation to happen in my life, and I would write about it in the morning. Like, yeah, I think like today at work is going to be very difficult because I got to do this task and that task and whatever. Or in that case, I didn't have to present, but going back to the example of doing a presentation, it's like, oh, I feel very nervous about the presentation, and then on the next page, and then the day after, I would read that page and I'm like, oh, this actually never happened. And I was suffering so much for something that never happened. So there I started to realize how tricky the mind was. So I give you an example on this job that I was parking cars. Part of my job or my duty was to deliver cars to different hotels where I was working. And part of that, sometimes I would need to drive a car and then park it somewhere, go get the client, write the contract, and then go back to that car and give him the keys for another car that was parked around. Or sometimes I gave him the car that I was driving and I needed to find another car that I had. Like, it was just about swapping cars and here and that. And sometimes I knew where cars were parked. Sometimes I needed to find them. And then I had a very tight schedule, right? Like, I would just like the times I needed to go to the hotels were very, very tight. And so I was in a rush every day. It was kind of in a rush, and also unpredictable because I didn't know if the client was going to show up or not, or if they're going to be late, or if they forgot their credit card, or whatever it was. So it was a very unpredictable job. But the thing is, like the day before, I always sort of had the reservations. I always sort of knew where I needed to go, what route I had to take, and I could also ask my colleagues where they parked the cars, so I wouldn't waste so much time finding the cars after I deliver a car. Because sometimes I will have to go to the street with the key and just like click around everywhere and and trying to find where the car was parked because I didn't know. They told me, yeah, around this area, but around that area, like who knows? And I would be in a rush. So when I started the job, I suffered a lot in the beginning from not knowing where I could park, if I could find parking for that hotel, because some hotels had parking and some hotels not. So I would suffer a lot the day before. It's like, how's the route gonna be? Where the cars are gonna be parked? Like la la la. I would try to really plan ahead from the day before. And I had a colleague there that he was working there for like 8-10 years or something like that. Very old, very nice guy. Maybe not super, super bright in the mind, but super wise, like very, very wise. And he would see me that I would suffer a lot from this. And I would ask him like, hey, where is the car parked? This and that, this and that. And he got me one day and it's like, dude, don't worry, because every day you come here and we just don't know what's going to happen. Like maybe a reservation got canceled. Maybe you need to go somewhere else. Maybe you go there and you find parking. Maybe you find the car, maybe not. Like it is so unpredictable. So don't suffer from the day before for something that you don't even know if it's going to happen. And yeah, and that was crazy. So with that, I stopped planning. I stopped planning the day before. Of course, I would see the route or whatever, but I would go down to the office every day and I'll be like, okay, let's see what's up. And I reduced the amount of stress that I was coming with in the morning. I was just happy. I'm like, yeah, let's see, give me what you need. And look, if I'm late, I'm late. Like, who cares? If I get fired, I get fired, like whatever it is. So it was a very nice lesson. And with this lesson and tying it to the journal, it was like both combination, right? Like the combination of my friend telling me that and the combination of seeing in the journal, how much I would suffer already from the day after, from what's going to happen tomorrow, and realizing and reading back and laughing there after meditation, like laughing at the couch. I'm like, wow, I was suffering so much because I had to deliver this car to this parking. And I actually never had to deliver it because they canceled the reservation. So I was like, why am I wasting so much time in suffering for something that has never happened? And I hope that you can apply this to your life. Of course, you just heard my story, but just bring it back to your life. How many times are you suffering, like for what you have to do tomorrow? And then tomorrow happens, and then you don't have to do that thing anymore, or something changes. Or you say that you have to do a very important appointment, like doctor appointment, for example, and you are very nervous. And the appointment is in 20 days. And you're super nervous because you're thinking that you have some sort of like discomfort in your body and you don't know what it is. And you're already suffering from the discomfort itself, but you're suffering from the thought of like going to the doctor and thinking that something really bad is going to happen. And sometimes you go to the doctor and nothing happens. Or it goes away even before you go to the doctor. So yeah, just question to yourself, how much energy are you giving into future thoughts and future situations that may never happen? Like I did when I was having this job, parking cars and all of that. Okay. And now I give you another story. Actually, I don't know if you can see, well, whatever. I have like a tattoo here, and it's like a wave with a sun. And yeah, it represents like a part. I'm from Canary Island, from Gran Canaria, and I'm from a beach town. And so I spent a lot of time at the beach and surfing for many years of my life. If you ever surfed or if you ever catch waves, there's a phenomena probably everywhere, which is that I think it's called the series. or we say the series in Spanish, which is that sometimes the wave are not super big, so you have to wait a little bit. And then at some point you get like a series of like 3, 4, 5 waves or 2 waves that they're bigger than the others. So as a surfer, you kind of want to wait until you get the bigger waves, right? So you get a better wave or whatever. And so at the beach that I lived, there was, like farther in the ocean, like there was like a corner place, like on the left side of the beach. And you would watch there to see when the big waves were coming, because like they sort of hit the rocks over there first, and then they would go down to the beach. So most of the time I was spending just looking at that corner over there, waiting for the bigger waves. And with this future thought and this thing that I've been talking about, what I didn't know or what I didn't realize was that I was missing a lot of waves because I was waiting for the wave to come. And the thing is, like, when you saw that wave hitting the rocks, then you could see that wave sort of coming, but many times the wave disappeared. It lost strength. And that wave that looked super big, it hit the beach and it wasn't big at all. And sometimes a wave that I didn't see hitting the rocks would get to the beach and I would miss it because I was looking at the rocks and I wasn't getting ready to catch the other wave. So there, well, part of this tattoo, I guess, or that story, or in that period of my life where I got this, it's like I started to realize in this metaphor how many times in my life I was in different situations, I was looking at the wave that is gonna come instead of leaving the current wave that it's here. And yeah, so I hope that you understood this story, and if you didn't, it is okay. But yeah, so of course, at that time, like going more into meditation and everything, I also started to think more about the present moment. If you haven't read the book The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle, I totally recommend it to you. One of my favorite books, and it talks a lot about the present moment. And if you also hear his videos on YouTube, podcasts, talks, or whatever, he talks a lot about the present moment. So, I mean, this might sound cliche, or at least I think it sounds cliche, and it's also real, which is what the thing that really matters is actually the present moment. Like the future, how much does the future happen if we just don't know if it's going to happen? So with that said, like, is it important to think about the future? Of course it is, right? But how much importance do you want to give to something that you just don't know if it's going to happen at all in your life? Whether a situation you haven't lived or whether it is your dream life or your mission. I also remember, like, more recently, like in these past months, so this thing about the podcast it has been a fantasy in me for many, many years of like doing a podcast and, fantasizing of like, oh, imagine if I become famous, imagine if I get to interview all these really cool people, these really famous people or authors or Eckhart Tolle maybe. Imagine if that happens, that would be crazy. What a dream. But anyways, I would daydream about these things, right? And especially also because I wanted to escape back in the day, and now I don't want to escape that kind of life anymore. But yeah, I fantasize of like, I want to make money, I wanna become famous, or it would be really cool. It would be really cool if I had money and just like financial independence in a way, and if I could work just doing this thing that I believe I really like, even though I wasn't actually doing it. I thought in my mind that I would really like to do podcasts and all of that, and so I created a huge story, and for many years that story didn't really help me at all because I wasn't doing it, and I was suffering a lot because I thought that I had a lot of potential for being a speaker, for being an author, and I had a lot of potential of like maybe becoming famous or something like that. But it was just that. It was just fantasy. It was just a story. It was nothing real. But I just didn't know that at that time. I was so engaged with the fantasy and the story. And now it was sort of the same. Like even now that I believe I have a lot more tools and I'm a lot more mature, It was kind of the same before I started. I decided that I wanted to go back and start this journey again, like maybe 3-4 months ago, but I would start maybe only like a month ago. And so because I needed to finish some things and all of that. And so for that time, so I had like 3 weeks or 1 month of thinking about doing the podcast again, but not doing it. And also fantasizing and like with the same pattern, with the same story. And here's the thing, and I also it reminds me of when I was telling you the story about the exercise and working out. So thinking about doing the podcast was not helping me at all. It was blocking me. And I was suffering a lot as well. But like some weeks ago, I already started and it has become sort of like a weekly routine. Now I don't have the fantasy so much anymore. Like it is not so alive. Now it's more of like going to the gym, like I just go and see what happens. So now it's kind of like, yeah, I record and see what happens. I don't know if this is gonna go viral or if anyone is gonna watch this or if this is gonna give me anywhere or do anything for me. Like, or if I can make a living out of this. Of course I cannot know. I just started and that's not gonna happen. But if one day it happens, wonderful. But anyways, like this is the thing. Like I have become aware that I have a story. I have a fantasy about like this whole podcast thing and this life mission and all of that. And what I do is kind of like, great, I have a story, but what do I want to do with this? So instead of fantasizing and thinking how cool it would be that the podcast becomes so big that I speak about all these things and people become super inspired and maybe I write a book and like all of that. Instead of thinking about the big thing, I just say, okay, look, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And that helps me a lot. So it's one way that I stop thinking about the future so much. And when the future comes, I just allow it, observe it, and it's like, yeah, it's another story, it's another dream. Cool. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. So I hope that these stories you could understand or that they brought some value to you. But yeah, lastly, I just wanted to remind you before we go into actually dealing on like how or the ways I think I do and the ways maybe can help you on how to deal with like this suffering from the future when we have a story. One of the things is to remind you on how does the future affect your present moment. I think this is one of the greatest keys to realize if you are in a story about the future with your life, with your relationship, with your job, with money, whatever it is. How does this story that you have in your mind about your future, you in a couple years, how it affects you in the present moment? And just observe when you have a story about the future, just observe, is it making you suffer? Is it bringing you any good? And many times it will be yes. Many times it will bring you good things. And that's great. Sometimes it will bring you suffering. And that can also be good if the suffering helps you to do something. And maybe I tell you that I believe that all pain is actually good in one way or another, because we need to leave that pain, or our soul needs to leave that pain in order to heal something from the past. But yeah, this is very philosophical maybe, and I can tell you more on another episode if you want to hear things about healing and all that. I think I talk about it quite often. But anyways, just think how your future thoughts about your life affects you in the present moment. And just be aware. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to change anything. Please don't change anything. That is beautiful science. And the fact that you are listening to this right now and today, it's because life wanted you. Life guided you. Somehow, somewhat randomly, you click here, boom, and you listen to this little clip, this little something. And it's because you needed to hear this. Because maybe life is guiding you to live your life in a more conscious way. In one conscious way of living it, it's this. When you have a story about the future, just think. Not think about the story. The story is cool. That's great. If it's a nice story, if it's a painful story, like you got to go to the doctor or you got to go somewhere that you can suffer a lot, Maybe it's not that cool to have that story, but independently of the story, just think of what's happening in you in the present moment, what's happening in your body, how this story affects you in the present moment. And just by doing that, you are already, taking a step towards consciousness, taking a step toward awareness, and especially taking a step towards separating yourself from the story of your mind, yourself from your ego, yourself from that voice in your head that likes to, like my voice, that likes to daydream and fantasize about the podcast, or having relationship or children or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I think the story is great, it's beautiful. Let's not talk bad about the story, but the cool part is this: realizing that you are not the story, you are not that story, you're not the future. That is not real. You are just here, present right now. And if this story is affecting your life right now, okay, then you can always make a decision and say, well, if you understand that this is a story and this may or may not be real, but you just cannot know, well, you can just observe yourself and separate from it. Maybe not follow the story so much. Maybe be like, okay, take a breath. And in that breath, there is no story. So you can just be present. So yeah, that is one way of dealing with the future and future stories, and especially with the suffering that there is from future stories, which is to become aware of the story, not what's inside the story, but that you're having a story, and just observe it. Just by that, you're already separating yourself a little bit from the story, and you're becoming present a little bit. And that's it. From, of course, going back to your body and seeing like, okay, yeah, I'm having thoughts about something. That's great. That's beautiful. Not suppress any thoughts, not suppress any story. This is not about the story is good or bad, or dreaming that I sometimes had the dream of becoming president of Spain. And let me tell you, like those little 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I feel like amazing. But yeah. And then sometimes there's also stories about triggers in your life. This person said this to you, or your partner, or your friend, or your family, like mother, father, whatever it is. Those are also ways of thinking about the future. Like we are thinking about the future all the time, essentially, probably, or most of the time. So that's the thing, just become aware when you're drifting on, when you're drifting into your mind, when you're drifting into your voice. And just bring it back to the present and be like, okay, great. I was in a story. I was thinking I was president of Spain. Wonderful. I'm not. So let's just keep going. And maybe this is more of a fantasy, but on more real situations. So I hope that you get this part, that becoming aware, it's one of the one way you can stop the suffering from the future. Another way, which is, it's very simple. And this is the beautiful part about all of this and the teachers that I've had, and the life experiences that I had. This is the most beautiful part, that you don't need to go to the Himalaya and meditate for 20 years. You don't need to read 20 books or listen to 20 podcasts or have 4 careers in university. You don't need anything like that. You already have everything you need, and life is super simple. Life is so simple. We make it super complicated, but life is super simple. So this is the most simple thing or tip that I can give you to stop this suffering from the future, which is, I was just reading the notes, which is that to realize that this story that you have may never happen. Like this guy with the video and the memes about, like, this is so easy and so simple. The things that we imagine in the future, the things that you're thinking about, what's going to happen tomorrow, or what's going to happen next week, or within a month you have a wedding, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter which situation you think of. It just may never happen. It doesn't matter how likely it is that if I throw this Palo Santo and it's going to hit the table, and I can predict that. There are many things that we can predict and they may happen one way or another, but there are things that just may never happen. It just may never happen. And that can bring a lot of ease and a lot of, it can reduce the suffering a lot when you just think that, Yeah, you're thinking of something that's going to happen tomorrow or next week. Oh, and you're suffering a bit from that because you're nervous. Like I said, you have to go to the doctor or making a presentation or have a job interview or whatever it is. Okay, cool. Acknowledge that and also realize that it just may not happen. So is it worth to suffer right now? Is it worth to suffer in this moment, this afternoon, the Sunday afternoon? Is it worth to suffer for something that's going to happen on Wednesday, on Sunday afternoon? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth suffering. And of course, sometimes it's unconscious and sometimes we just suffer. But this is the point. It's like it's not that you magically suddenly become enlightened and you can stop all the suffering in your life and you're just never gonna think about the future again. That's not realistic, I believe. But you can reduce that suffering by catching yourself. When you go into the mind, like I said before, becoming aware, you catch yourself, and you also change the narrative, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know if that's gonna happen, so I'm just not gonna give it so much thought. And by doing that, you're already reducing the suffering a lot. And lastly, I give you my favorite one, which is the one I use all the time. And I smile because I think it's really fun to think this way, which is to tell yourself, do you wanna suffer right now for something that is gonna happen in 3 days? Or do you prefer suffering when the thing happens in 3 days and not right now? Yeah, I don't know if you got that one. I said this one to myself all the time. It's like, okay, maybe, let's say I give you an example this week. Part of my job is to organize events, and the first day of the events are always like a little bit unforeseen, because a lot of guests come and they had to stay here, and I don't know if some problem is going to happen and the kitchen is going to work or whatever it is, right? So every time there is an event, I could suffer from thinking about this event like I don't know when I'm going to publish, but today is Thursday here. And maybe I could suffer about this on Monday. And I've been actually suffering about this event for like a month maybe, but not suffering. But I've sometimes created stories about this event like a month before it happened. And what I tell myself is like, well, I catch myself, I become aware, oh, there's a story, great. Well, it may happen, it may not happen, we'll see. But then I tell myself, when I'm in bed thinking about this, like, you know what? I'm gonna suffer, but I'm gonna suffer when it happens, when the event happens. I'm not gonna suffer before. Like, no, I refuse to suffer before for something that I don't know if it's gonna happen. And I don't know if I actually will even suffer. And today, in fact, I haven't even suffered today. And maybe the event is over on Sunday and maybe I didn't even suffer at all. So this is the point. It's like, when my mind goes into this future story, into this possibly suffering because something goes wrong, well, that happened a month ago, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to suffer when the event happens. I'm going to deal with the suffering in the present moment. I am not going to deal with the suffering that's going to happen in 3 days. I'm not going to do the suffering already on Sunday. No, I refuse that. So yeah, this is the thing that I sort of do for my life, and I hope that you can also incorporate it if you resonate with this thing about suffering about the future. Just tell to yourself, it's like, okay, you have to do something in 3 days that you're gonna suffer from that. It's gonna be painful, whatever it is. Go to the doctor or job interview, or it doesn't matter. Just think about a situation that you have to do in 3 days and you're already nervous and suffering from it. And then you say to yourself, you know what? Good, great. I may face that interview, that situation, that whatever it is, but I'm gonna suffer at that moment when that actually happens, in the present moment from that situation. Right now, I'm here watching this podcast, cooking some food, whatever it is. Right now, I'm going to enjoy myself because what I think I'm going to suffer a lot tomorrow, I will suffer, but I will suffer tomorrow. Today, I'm not going to suffer it. So yeah, maybe procrastinate the suffering. Have you heard of that one before? I don't know. I haven't, but it just came to mind. And it's quite fun. And like I say, I say this to myself all the time, and it just has incredibly helped me in my life, especially this year. But again, with all this realization that I've been talking about in the podcast of the journal and having this job with the cars and all of that, little by little throughout the years, in the past 4 years, yeah, I've developed this, and the more and more I have developed, let's say, like a habit, and the amount of suffering that I have for future things have drastically reduced. So that's why I'm sharing this with you, because I hope that, yeah, if you suffer a lot from the future and tomorrow and next week, or me, like a month in advance, and you don't want to suffer so much from something that is just going to happen in a month, well, you can always think, or you can always say to yourself, great, you become aware, you're having a story. You realize that maybe the story doesn't happen, or maybe it doesn't happen the way you think it's going to happen. Maybe you don't even suffer so much. You don't know. And then actually say, okay, cool. Thank you, mind. Thank you, mind, for creating a story. Thank you. You are fascinating. Thank you for making me suffer today on the couch for something that I'm going to do tomorrow. Imagine going to the gym, that you think, oh, tomorrow you're going to the gym and you're going to suffer because you're going to do whatever muscles or whatever training. And you're now in the couch suffering for the gym of tomorrow. You can say, you know what? I'm going to suffer at the moment that I lift those weights or that I go running. Right now, I am here on the couch chilling. So I'm not gonna fucking suffer right now. Yeah, I hope this brought you some value, and I wanted to end this journey, this episode, by telling you that, yeah, all this future thinking and bringing suffering from thinking about the future, or just future thinking, it is not all bad, right? Like today I really focus on the suffering part, but there is another part of thinking about the future, which are the beautiful things like manifestation and this kind of trends that are on the internet of like manifesting and think about your life in 5 years and how good it's going to be and all of that. And I will also wanted to open the other side, like not all thinking about the future is suffering, and the same way, not all thinking about the future is blissful or pleasant. There's no black and white here, but there are situations. So just think about this. If you're thinking about something about the future, like something's going to happen in your life in 1 year, 3 years, or tomorrow, or in 1 week, and it's something good, it's something that's bringing you joy, it's something that, yeah, it's giving you good stuff, then great. Think about it that way. Also realize that that's also not real, but at least enjoy that it's pleasant, pleasant better than suffering, maybe sometimes. So yeah, if it's thinking about the future is bringing you good things, then great. But also understand that also may not be real. So yeah, just use the stories that your mind creates without you being aware. And if they're good, great. If they are like mine, like having this big podcast and dream job and all of that, and that actually paralyzes you or paralyzed me from taking action, then don't give so much weight to that thing about the future. But again, I'm not here so much to tell you what to do or to teach you anything. You're old enough. You have your life. You have your thing. You're probably wiser, smarter than me. Maybe not. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, if this episode, if this thing about the future brought you any value, I am very happy for you. I'm also happy for myself. And yeah, if you want to support me, you can do the drill of the internet, which is you can subscribe, you can like this video, you can comment, you can share with your friends, whatever you want. I appreciate it. Any sort of support is you don't have to pay anything, and I think it's wonderful to support. And lastly, and as usual, I also want to end the episode by saying yes to myself, for celebrating myself, because today I did not want to record at all. I had no topic. I was so like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna talk about. It was so difficult for me to do this today. I was playing a game actually, and I was like, I could play 3 more games and procrastinate and don't do this episode. Yeah, gotta find that grit, gotta find that willpower and just do it. And I was also thinking about the suffering of like, oh my God, I have to do the episode, write it, and don't know what to talk about, and like whatever it is. I was also in that mindset. And I also told to myself, well, you know what, I'll deal with the suffering when it happens. And you know what, I did this episode, and I believe I only suffer a little bit in the beginning from imposter syndrome and being a little bit shy and judgmental. Right now, I feel great. I don't think it was the best episode. It was whatever came out. But I do feel nice. I do feel great. I feel accomplished, and I celebrate myself for doing this. And yeah, thank you so much for being part of this journey. And I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.